And this is what's called the DNA clock. There's a lot of subtlety to it. Mutations aren't random on the clock, but this mechanism of aging things fits very well with evolution, because if we look at different animals that are related, we find that, let's say, we share a gene with a chimp and the bonobos, which are fossil genes. Well, we can look at how much ours has mutated. We can look at how much theirs has mutated. And we can make a guess for how long ago we had a last common ancestor between the two groups. And you can use these DNA fossils as timing devices to create trees, family trees. And that's what I have at the bottom at the very end. Chimps and bonobos have the most recent last common ancestor. Then humans and bonobos and chimps are related in terms of time. And going back in time, the next thing that is attached to that tree is gorillas. The next is orangutans, siamangs, which are like orangutans, green monkeys, and owl monkeys. So we're related to all of those things, but at different times in the past. I think this is a good place to stop for a break and questions, but I need to eat something, so I'm going to do that during the break.
These gorillas and green monkeys and
Right.
all those guys, how come they stayed the same?
They didn't. The last common ancestor that we have is going to look somewhat like a chimp, but not like modern chimps. And that's one of the things to remember, too, is that when we're talking about ancestors, we're not talking about ancestors that look exactly the same. It's unusual for something not to have changed. And so the coelacanth, for instance, was very unusual in that its present-day form is very similar to its ancient form.
It seems that the constant there is change
Mm-hmm.
all the way through.
All the time.
Guy go nuts try to follow it.
Well, there are other, I guess we're not taking a break except for me and my banana. Last time my blood sugar got low.
You just regressed to
A monkey.
A monkey and a human. Any other questions while
We're resting.
I'm eating?
Do you mind if I bring one next time?
Bring one up. And I admit today we're having no experiment.
Somebody walked in
I couldn't think
saw
of-
everybody eating you.
Bring us all bananas. They're good for you. They got potassium. They got
This is a
complex carbos.
banana class.
That's what I'll call it next year.
Speak for yourself.
Pardon?
Speak for yourself.
Thank you, Marlene.
God. This sounds like a very purposeful, rather than a random.
There you go. Mutations are random. Selection is not. Okay? Very important. The mutations may be random, but natural selection is what acts on those changes. So, natural selection is not random at all. If you duplicate an enzyme, and that enzyme allows you to eat a different fruit, or allows you to detoxify a certain chemical, for instance, nuts. Oak nuts have a very high level of tannic acid in them. If you've ever taken an acorn, split it open, and taken a bite, I was an adventurous kid, they're just horribly bitter. If you soak them in water and throw out the water, and soak them and throw out the water, you can leach that out. Well, but squirrels and rabbits don't give a hoot. They just eat it because they have something that will allow them to tolerate all that. If you took all that in, you'd end up with kidney stones and other things. So it appears random or by chance, but the selective pressures are not random at all. And it's really important to realize evolution is not a random event.
Well, you're saying there's a purpose. A purpose.
Well, but evolution also has no direction. If you wanted to say there was a direction, it was to adapt to the environment. But the environment changes, so human beings have moved into cold places, hot places, and so on. And if you look at bacteria, my God, there are bacteria that live 2,000 meters below the ground, and they're using the heat from the mantle as their energy source, not the sun or
Would
other
that be?
chemicals.
Would that be? Could that be a matter of adaptation?
It is. Natural selection is what chooses the adaptations that are beneficial. And so if you talk with someone about this, they'll often say, I don't know.
Today is not in there.
Oh.
This one. All I have is one. That's all right.
Oh. Okay. Could you
I'll get
copy
it
that one?
next week.
Okay. It's very important when people talk with you, they'll often say, evolution and it's supposed to be a random change and random chance. And it's not. The natural selection of the environment is a critical molding feature. For instance, if gazelles got slightly longer legs, would that help them to run faster and get away from the cheetah? Or would it make them less coordinated and more likely to fall down and be eaten by the cheetah? There's always a pro and con side, and things adapt to that seems to be okay, good enough level. And that's another important point. If you're thinking about evolution of the brain or something complicated but like the eye, the evolutionary adaptations that occur because of natural selection are just good enough. I mentioned to you at the very beginning, the blind spot you have in your eye, because of the way it's designed, other animals don't have that blind spot. For instance, the raptors, the birds of prey, they don't have a blind spot. And it's really important that they don't have a blind spot because they're, 4,000 feet up looking for a mouse. And if you had a blind spot, you would not get as many mice. So their vision does not have that little heaping up of neurons that we do at the optic cup, which form our blind spot. Well, let's just plow ahead, why don't we? I mentioned DNA fossils, but it turns out that there's also DNA that we label as immortal. Why? Because all cells of eukaryotes are the forms of animal and plant life that have a nucleus. All eukaryotes have very similar metabolisms. We all use glucose. We all form lactic acid. They're all kind of the same thing at that very, very, very low level of how do you work with things that are in your environment, foods, for instance. And because evolution has had a long enough time to work on that particular problem, it's come to a point where this is the best enzyme that you could have created. And so it's vital that it doesn't get altered, because if it gets altered, it won't function again. And so we have DNA, we have portions of our DNA that we share something ridiculous, like 50% of our genome is shared with corn. It just tells you that way back in evolution, when things were single-celled or multi-celled but not very organized, those kind of metabolic requirements were being met by a protein that evolved to be just good enough and to break if you mess with them. So we not only have DNA fossils, we have what are called immortal DNA, DNA that doesn't change anywhere you look.
Why do you say good enough?
Because it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be good enough. If you change the rate of a reaction by 10,000-fold, it really doesn't help you that much, if it's not a time contingent thing, to raise it to 1,000,000-fold. 10,000-fold is good enough.
In other words, at one certain point, the change comes unless you miss it. And then what happens?
You miss it, just like we were talking about ideas in the scientific world, many people having the same idea.
Yeah.
Many mutations occur across a population. We've got, 6 billion humans now? Trust me, there are a lot of mutations that are happening in those 6 billion humans. And it's going to be what will be tested in the future.
I'm going back to school.
Almost 7 billion.
Yeah. I think I've actually covered all the things in your handout, and I think I want to just mention some things to you about books, and then we'll quit. Richard Dawkins just came out with The Greatest Show on Earth. It's a very good, very easy read. And if you wanted one single place to go to, this would probably be a good read. This is also a very good read, and I would recommend those highly. I think this is a fabulous book. You have to understand most of what we've talked about in class in order to really get everything out of that, because he's talking about it at a very high level. This one is very specific about the discovery of Tiktaalik, which was the fossil remains which looked just like a fish, except that it had shoulders and a neck, which fish don't have, and is believed to be the quote-unquote missing link between fish and tetrapods, that is, land animals like amphibians, like a salamander with 4 legs. This is also a very easy, this is a good sort of summer read. He goes through the 23 chromosomes and talks about one gene on each one of the, and it's a very, very easy read.
Is everything a variable?
Yes.
How can you get so many variables?
No, you've got constants in there, but
Pardon?
You've got constants in there, but there are a lot of variables. That's true. This one, if you want to know about DNA and evolution, this is the book to read. If you're a guy, you might find some of this interesting. And this is also a book which was made into a special on Nova, The Making of the Fittest, by Sean Carroll. He's a very good writer, and he's a smart speaker.
You had this one up there too.
Yes.
Is that-
That's the comic book one, but I think it's the most accessible one to start with. I shouldn't say comic book. It's a graphic novel approach. Any other questions?
And the book that you gave me, I tried to look it up on,
Amazon?
Amazon, and it's all paper stuff. It's not, you can't get it on your iPad or anything.
Oh,
E-books,
yeah.
Which is a shame.
That is a shame, I agree.
Yeah.
Books like these should be on multiple
They should.
platforms and
They should.
should allow you to get them in any form. If you go to the Gutenberg Project, you can get or if you go to the Darwin website, you can get all of his works in any format, including for Kindle or a Sony Reader or for your iPad.
So it's starting. They're starting to.
Yeah, well, no, go there and you'll see there are thousands, tens of thousands of books that are available. But specifically, all of Darwin's works are now available to the public. And
You mean to tell me they weren't always available?
not in this form. She's talking about reading it on a computer
Oh.
rather than hardback. And I would recommend any of these books for your summertime reading.
That's plural.
Yes. Read. I'd like you to read one of these in a week.
Wow. Don't think so.
The thing is, if I really like a book, I'll read it in a day or two. And that's why I read them again. Because a day or two is not enough time for the stuff to soak into your brain.
You've been speed reading, that's why.
Yeah. I'm going to stop the recording and consider this, we're done.